is Alex Vanover with DIY Alex, and I'm so glad that you're here. In addition to Cricut crafts and DIY, organizing is something that I'm so passionate about because I function so much better in an organized craft space. So I can't wait to teach you what I have learned over the years. We are going to cover why I chose the organizers that I have in my craft space, and some things that you should consider when you're deciding whether to organize in bins, baskets, drawers, and so forth while creating your dream craft space. This is gonna help you so much because it's gonna save you so much time, first of all, because you'll always be able to find the craft supplies that you're looking for when you're looking for it. And it's gonna save you money because buying a bunch of extra organization supplies is expensive. So I wanna cut out all the errors for you, tell you exactly what you need to think about when you're choosing what you need to organize, and hopefully create a system that works for you, your craft space, and honestly makes your space so inspirational and a place of order and not chaos. By the time you're finished with this video, you're gonna be ready to tear into your craft room and change everything. So let's get into it. So if you've ever seen one of my videos, you probably recognize this space. This is the main organization space in my craft room, and it's also the background of my videos. So let me tell you how I came to create this background and what these products are. So keep in mind that I wasn't just creating an organization system here. I was also creating an aesthetically pleasing video background. So that's important because you probably aren't doing something like that. But in order to understand what I was thinking, you have to have that context. Now, when we originally moved into this house and I wanted to use this room as my craft room, I really wanted a create room Dreambox. That was honestly my dream background. However, I chose a room with vaulted ceilings. So I don't know how well you can tell. The ceilings honestly aren't much taller than me, and I'm just under 5'2". So they're not super tall. So the way that a Dreambox is built, there's not a place where I could actually set the Dreambox up and open the sides, because the long sides of this room have the vaulted ceilings, and on the other sides there's a window on this wall and a door on this wall, so that just simply wasn't going to logistically work. Plus it's a pretty expensive piece of organization furniture. If I wasn't going to be able to fully utilize it, I didn't really want to invest in that. So this is what I did instead. So I tried to embody the idea of a Dreambox. If you've never seen a Dreambox, I'll put a picture up here on the screen. What you'll notice is that there are lots of compartments, most of them being drawers or shelves that you can add bins to, which essentially creates drawers anyway. Plus, many of the bins are clear, which means that you can put cardstock on the inside of the bins and create an aesthetically pleasing look in your favorite colors and patterns. Something else I loved about the Dreambox is that it was big, so it could hold a lot of supplies, and I also wanted to be able to hold a lot in my craft space. So my next step was to get online and find something that would fill this space for me. And that's when I stumbled on organization from Ikea. Spoiler alert, that's where most of the furniture in this room is from. Not 100%, but a lot of it is from Ikea. So I will link everything that I am talking about down in the description of this video. So if you're within driving distance of an Ikea, I do think that it is worth the drive, especially if you know exactly what you want. But even if you're not near an Ikea, you can kind of do the same thing that I did with the Dreambox. You can take the concepts of what you want and fill it in with something else. Plus, I'm sure you guys have seen cube organizers from other companies besides Ikea. These are 13-inch by 13-inch cubes, and you can find a lot of those at Walmart, Target, a lot of other really similar places. I would also consider checking Facebook Marketplace and seeing what local to you is already being sold that's in still great shape. So there's still lots of different ways you can go about this, even without being close to an Ikea. So these two large cube organizers are Ikea Kallax cubes. I purchased 2 of the 3x4 cubes, which basically gives me 12 on each side, a total of 24 different categories for me to organize. And to add a little bit of extra aesthetics and kind of a pleasing look to it, I added some inserts here along the top row. These two on the outer sides are called inserts with drawers. and the one in the middle is called inserts for bottles. And like I said, I'll link everything I'm using in the description of the video. That's what added this extra look. And these are also specifically from Ikea. It was also really important to me to be able to hide my mess. I didn't want anything clear so it looked uniform, even when the inside of the drawers was messy. So for example, my tape has zero categorization. It's all just thrown inside of there. But I can just as easily shut my drawer and it still looks really nice and organized. When I was choosing the fabric bins to put in all of the lower spots, I ultimately found these pink cubes with polka dots from Target. And unfortunately, they are discontinued because I've had them for several years. But one thing I learned is that there are tons of different options for these different sizes. Just because you buy your cube organizer from Ikea or Walmart or Target doesn't mean that you need to buy your bins from there. So I ended up finding these at Target, and they're the brand called Pillow Fort, which is actually the kids organization line that they have. So just get creative with Googling and searching for different bins until you find one that you really like the look of. And like I said, these are 13-inch by 13-inch cubes, which is super standard in the world of organization. So even after I purchased both of my Kallax cubes, I still ended up with a little bit of width that I needed to decorate. So that's when I chose to get a set of the wide Alex drawers from Ikea. And honestly, both of our names are Alex. Like, how could I not buy some Alex drawers? They actually come in a lot of different sizes though, and a lot of different widths. So these are the wide ones. And I actually started out with just one set of them. You probably can't tell this now, but this is where the first set of them stops. And I used to set my printer on top of that first set of drawers. But what I didn't like about that is when I looked back at my video footage, there was a really dramatic height drop in between the Kallax cubes and the Alex drawers, and I just didn't really like the aesthetics of that. So later on, I purchased a second set of the wide Alex drawers, and I just stacked it right on top for even more organization. Something I've learned that is helpful for me is that the drawers that I use need to have as many smaller categories as I can. Having drawers with tons of supplies that I have to sort through to find everything wastes a ton of time, in my opinion, and it creates a mess. If you end up having to open a drawer and take everything out in order to find what you're looking for, then you have to put it back when you're done. That just ends up making a mess and wasting a lot more time. So I have categorized these drawers as much as possible. I'll show you a couple examples that look pretty good. I have several drawers, actually just these two, of acrylic blanks, and I have as many little plastic bins as I could fit in these drawers as possible. And I actually created these categories using sticky notes so I could remember like what category goes with what. So this top drawer is all acrylic blanks. And then there's additional blanks down here, but this is more of like accessories. So it's like the beads and the little dangles that you can add to keychains, and some of the larger pieces of acrylic that I have that you could use for like an LED base or anything like that. And so that has just worked really well for me because I find that it keeps it as organized as possible. Another reason why the wide Alex drawers are great for crafters is because it almost fits a 12 by 24 sheet of vinyl. So this one, I have some longer sheets, and if they're super rigid, they don't fit down in there. They're at a little bit of an angle, but this is able to store some of my specialty vinyl that I don't use all the time. And that's a really huge benefit for crafters. So that's another reason why I really like the wide Alex drawers. Lastly, what I loved about these Kallax units is that I still had room on top to decorate my units for the different seasons. Honestly, as I've become a mom, that's something that I've had to let go of. So I let the same vines and the same decorations stay up here year round. But before I had a baby, I used to change it out for fall and for Christmas, and then I usually left spring and summer the same. So that was just another added bonus of a way that I could mix up my backdrop without having to make any major changes. So here are the tips that you can take from how I organize this section of my craft room. The first tip is to consider the physical space. Whether you need to think about the height of a vaulted ceiling or even the width of the wall, the physical amount of space that you have to work with is the first and the most important thing that you need to consider when you're organizing a space. The second thing that you can learn is to be self-aware. When you're deciding how you want to organize, you need to know what works best for you and how you work. For example, I told you that I like as many categories as possible because then I don't have to sort through a bunch of extra stuff. But maybe that's confusing for you and you hate that. So you need to consider how you work and what makes sense, especially when choosing your furniture, but even things like categories, what bins, baskets, and drawers, etc., that you want to choose for your craft space. And the third tip that you can learn from this section is to organize large drawers as much as possible. Because if you just have a big heap of supplies inside a drawer, that's no more organized than having a big heap of supplies on the floor. So whether you utilize plastic bins or you even save clean leftover food jars that you wash, utilize those or even mason jars to categorize things as small as you can and keep your drawers organized so it's not just a big heap of stuff behind a drawer. So as you can see on this wall, I have an open wall floor to ceiling. So that's why I chose the Billy bookcase, which is also from Ikea. Utilizing open shelving allowed me to organize things that were a little bit larger and were also multiple sizes. So I know you can't see it in the shot, but on the very bottom of my Billy bookcase, I have my StarCraft Solo. And then on the next shelf up, I have things like my Cricut mug press, my digital camera, my Easy Press, different things like that. So that open shelving gave me a little bit more flexibility with choosing what to store on it. You can see that I did create a few categories with some various bins that don't match that I had laying around. For example, this is a big bin of things that I have messed up. These are messed up projects. These are some unfinished projects that I can go back and make later if I want to. This bin contains some spare parts, things like tassels or leftover pieces that I've made a little too much for my projects. So I have created some separation with some different bins. They're a little mix and match and it looks a little bit messier, but it still allows me to stay organized. So one of the priorities when I was planning this wall was making sure that I had a spot for my large sublimation printer. So I chose the two tall Alex drawers side by side because I needed to create enough space to hold my SG-1000 printer. Not only does the second set offer way more organization, but it also offers a big enough base that I can set my printer on top of it. Plus, honestly, I had already hung my rainbow LED light up here, and the fact that I didn't have to move it because this was the perfect height was just an extra bonus. So here's what you can learn from this space. First, always consider your priorities. My first priority was making sure that I had a place for my SG-1000. So I chose the side-by-side Alex drawers to make sure I had a place for that. Then when I realized I had some extra room still left, then I purchased the Billy bookcase to take up some of the rest of the wall. So always make sure that you prioritize the most important parts first, then you can fill in the rest of the space with what's left over. And the second tip is that the open shelving allows for more flexibility with items of different sizes. Now, in my personal opinion, it does look a little bit messier than something like the Kallax cubes where I can keep all of my mess hidden behind a bin, but sometimes that's a necessary trade-off when you have items of various sizes. So the next area that I wanted to highlight in my craft room is my heat press table. Now, unfortunately, I can't offer a link to this table for you guys because it was built by my husband. But in case you're on the more petite side like I am, I wanted to explain to you how we figured this out so that if you need something similar and maybe you have a crafty husband like I do, he can build a table for you or you can find something that works. So if you're petite like me, like I said, I'm just a little under 5'2", you might need a little bit of a shorter table to utilize your heat press. Otherwise, it can really hurt your back. You'll see a lot of people prop it up on like some of the Harbor Freight toolboxes and things like that. And if that works for you, that's great. It just didn't work for me because of how tall it was. So what we actually did is we set my heat press on top of my table, which, spoiler alert, is also from Ikea. My craft table is adjustable. So then we set the press on that and we adjusted the height until we found the most comfortable area for me to open and close my heat press at high pressure. And that's the height that my husband built this table. So that's kind of the thought process behind there, how we chose that. Plus, we knew we were going to put it in this area, so he was able to utilize kind of a deep, funky area that's created because this is the closet that holds a little bit of craft supplies as well. So that's how we got to this table. But I also wanted to highlight the bins underneath my craft table. So let me adjust my camera and I'll show you a better view. So notice all the bins underneath my table add an extra layer of storage. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but there's 3 in the front and 3 in the back. Again, unfortunately, these were discontinued by Pillow Fort, so I can't offer a link for them, but they were found in the same section as the fabric bins from Target, so maybe that's something you can look for. But what I wanted to highlight for you is that most of the stuff in these bins holds different accessories for my heat presses and other like heat transfer vinyl and heat activated related crafts like sublimation and DTF. Now the front are by far easier to access, so I keep the things I use the most often actually in this bin right here because they're just simply the easiest to get to for me. There are 3 in the back, but they are full of items that I don't use very often and take a lot more effort to pull out. That's the tip that you can take from this craft section, is keep the items closest to you that are most accessible. Items that are difficult to reach, you can put like maybe behind something else, or in this case, since I have to take these bins out in order to access the ones in the back, it is worth it because I don't get those items in the back out very often. And also, I think you can see it in the bottom of my shot, I do store a little bit of cardstock underneath my table. This is where I put 12 by 24 inch paper that I don't have another home for. So this piece of furniture behind me is called a multimedia shelf. It was also from Ikea, but I feel like it's been discontinued because I can't find it online as of right now. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. This was by far the hardest thing to organize in my entire craft room. And on many of these projects, I had to get help from my husband because he's actually a really, really gifted organizer. And we were finally able to find a system that worked. It was not an easy feat. So first of all, we found all of the blanks that I had or all of the supplies that I had actually, that were sublimation related. So almost everything on this shelf is for sublimation. And the reason I decided to do that is because once I got into sublimation, it was really confusing to figure out which t-shirts, which mugs, which tumblers I had were for like vinyl and HTV crafts versus things that were sublimation friendly. So I separated almost all of them, and almost everything you see here is for sublimation. Then to actually organize these spaces, what we ended up doing was most things that had a very like geometric solid box, we were able to put in some of these larger areas. So for example, Fusible Ink has all the same size box. It's very uniform, so that makes it easier to put in some of these larger spaces. We did the same thing lower down for all of my like sublimation glass cans that are smaller. All of the boxes are uniform, so they fit really well into these larger areas. Now the t-shirts, of course, we had to fold specifically to roll up and stick in this area, and this is all of like my sublimation paper, tape, things like that. But in these smaller areas down the middle, what we ended up doing was utilizing a lot of clear bins. And the reason we wanted clear bins here is because there are so many shapes and sizes of some of these items. I knew they were going to be really, really hard to keep track of if I didn't give them a defined space like a clear bin. Plus, I was able to print and cut clear labels on my Cricut so that I actually have them categorized with a label as well. So honestly, if you're looking for a recommendation for different furniture pieces, I don't really recommend this shelf either way, just because it was so hard to functionally make sure I was using all the space and make sure that a lot of space wasn't wasted. So I think that there are some easier options out there. As always, you can learn a couple of things from this space. The first thing you can learn is keeping the same crafts together helps make life so much easier. So for example, instead of lumping together every t-shirt I own, every mug blank I own, keeping things separate for different crafts is really helpful because then I don't have to second guess whether or not a mug I have should be used for vinyl or if it should be used for sublimation. The second tip that I have is to utilize clear bins, especially if you want to be able to see what you have really fast. It's also really beneficial for items that are small and you might lose track of otherwise, because it just gives it a really nice defined space, makes it really easy to see what you have just at a glance. Plus, if you utilize clear labels, that makes it really clear what this is, and I can keep all of these items together. If you're looking to get a more organized craft space, then I bet you also like to be organized while you craft too. And that's why you have to join my free craft resources vault. It's full of freebies, checklists for all your crafts, and downloads, with more to come in the future, helping you to make sure that you don't forget anything, especially when you're just getting started. Once you get to the free craft resources vault, make sure to bookmark it if you're on your computer, or open it up as a tab on your phone so you can always easily get back into the vault and check and see what's new. But don't worry, if you ever lose access to the vault or lose the link, you can always go to DIYAlex.com/resources and re-enter your name and email to join the free vault again and see what the latest downloads are. Like I said, all I need is your name and email address, and that gets you into the free craft resources vault. So you can scroll down on this page to find the link to go directly there, or you can go to DIYAlex.com/resources, enter your name and email, and you'll get an instant access to all these downloads. I hope they're super helpful in keeping you organized beyond just your craft space. So I hope that by explaining how I chose different bins, baskets, drawers, etc. throughout my craft space, you're able to think through which organizers fit best in your dream craft space. Which organization tip was your favorite from this video? Let me know down in the comments below. If you learned something, be sure to give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to DIY Alex for more videos and tutorials a lot like this one. All the hearts.